They didn't assign him to protect a princess. They sentenced him to her. Jared Voss had worn the uniform of the Terran Defense Force with pride once, commanding patrols along disputed borders, a soldier bred in steel and fire. But pride has a cost, and his was measured in a fist to a superior's face. They didn't court-martial him, they simply buried him, reassigned not to a battlefield, but to the quiet halls of diplomacy where nothing happened and everything mattered. His latest burden had a name that whispered across the stars like perfume: Princess Salara of the Arkan Dominion. To the galaxy, she was a spectacle, a scandal wrapped in silk and arrogance, the daughter of an empire, and a thorn in every diplomat's side. Her reputation dripped with chaos, failed treaties, broken alliances, whispers of sabotage and seduction. When Jared met her for the first time, she wore nothing but golden paint and a smile sharp enough to draw blood. Her violet eyes shimmered with mischief, her skin glowed like moonlight, and her words curled around him like smoke. But Jared stood like iron. Her games were not his war, yet beneath the flirtation, something didn't fit. Behind the playful cruelty and stage spectacle, there was a flicker of something else: intelligence cloaked in absurdity, pain masked by laughter. He saw it when no one else was looking. She was not just a wild royal. She was watching, calculating. That night, in the stillness of her quarters, she spoke without pretense. Her voice trembled not with fear, but with revelation. Someone was coming for her. Assassins, cloaked in politics, hiding in shadows even she couldn't name. She had stolen something sacred, something that should have been beyond her reach, something only a rightful heir could access, and she had chosen him, not by accident, by design. "You think this was just a punishment for you?" she said. "I asked for you, Jared Voss. You don't follow orders. You follow truth." He didn't know what haunted her, only that it now hunted them both. And in that moment, standing before the most dangerous woman in the galaxy, Jared Voss realized he wasn't just guarding a princess, he was standing between her and a blade only she could see. He should have walked away. That's what the old Jared would have done, shake his head at another royal mess and let it burn. But when she looked at him, really looked, something shifted. Not in her beauty, that wasn't rare. It was in the honesty she bled through silence. She wasn't pretending anymore. From that moment on, nothing returned to normal. Salara resumed her outward game: winks, laughter, veiled provocations at galas glittering with the power-hungry. But Jared watched closer. Every seemingly harmless act was surgical. Every misplaced touch on a diplomat's sleeve, every drunken stumble near a tech baron, every giggle beside an ambassador, none of it was random. She wasn't just causing chaos. She was charting it, using it, and Jared, unwillingly, became her shield in her mirror. That night, back in the privacy of her chamber, he demanded truth. "You're not who you pretend to be," he said, watching her brush her silver hair in long strokes, her back turned to him. "And what do I pretend to be?" she asked softly. "A fool. But you're planning something." She didn't deny it, didn't laugh. She turned with the weight of 1,000 untold stories in her eyes. There was a vault buried beneath the Dominion's royal tower, guarded by machines older than stars, accessible only by blood. Not just a vault, a Genesis archive, the future of a lineage encoded into strands of royal DNA. She had taken it, the foundation of power stolen from under her mother's throne, and she had made herself a target. "They won't just exile me," she whispered. "They'll erase me, quietly, efficiently." Jared tried to make sense of it. Why him? Why risk everything on a soldier discarded by his own people? "Because you don't serve power," she said. "You protect what matters, even when it doesn't make sense." Then the lights died, glass exploded, shadows dropped from the ceiling. Like whispers of death, eyes glowing with venom, blades aimed not to threaten, but to end. Jared moved before thought caught up. Steel instincts roared back to life. His weapon spat plasma, the air screamed, and blood boiled across the floor. And when it was over, and the bodies lay still, she stood there, shaking, clutching a disc, soaked in her own people's secrets. "They were Arkan," she said, voice brittle. "My mother sent them." Jared said nothing. Words meant little now, only survival mattered, and the path ahead led away from orders, away from oaths, and straight into war. They ran. Not from duty, not from justice, but from inevitability. The station that once echoed with political theater now hummed with silence, the kind that follows a kill. Jared led, silent and efficient, weapon drawn, instincts pulsing like radar. He didn't ask where they were going. He already knew a way. Away from the Empress's reach, away from the eyes that reported, judged, and executed. Behind him, Salara followed barefoot, her robe torn and trailing. She didn't speak. She didn't cry. She just ran, like someone finally remembering how. They reached the hangar, not the main decks. They were already compromised. Jared pulled her to a service panel few knew existed, revealing a maintenance skimmer, small and forgotten. It had no logs, no clearance codes, only 2 seats and a heartbeat of trust. They launched without announcement, swallowed by the dark between stars. And no one spoke as they drifted beneath the electromagnetic wake of a merchant freighter, their trail hidden in its digital dust. The skimmer had no jump drive, but Jared had something else: a salvage station's forgotten coordinates, dead on most maps but alive in the mind of a soldier who never stopped planning for escape. Salara curled in the passenger seat, knees to chest, staring at space like it could answer something. Do you think they'll follow? She asked. They already are. She nodded once, slowly. Good. Jared looked at her, the shimmer of fire dimmed but not extinguished. Good. If they're chasing me, she said, it means I still matter. The salvage station appeared like a ghost rising from mist, floating above a gas giant that breathed storms of violet and gold. The place reeked of abandonment, steel bones, shattered dreams. Jared docked them in silence, led her through broken airlocks, past dead consoles and flickering lights, into the husk of what once repaired warships. He found an officer's room, half intact, and made it home. There was no palace, no throne, just rust wires and the hum of old ghosts. But for now, it was shelter. Why are you still helping me? She asked, sitting on the cot with eyes that had seen too much. Jared paused. Because when you told the truth, someone tried to kill you. She looked at him. Or maybe because you feel alone too. He didn't answer. She lay back, staring at the ceiling, and whispered like a child confessing a dream. I used to imagine freedom. Not escape. Real freedom. No crown. No role. Just me. Jared sat beside her, a soldier without a war, a protector without a nation. And who is just you? He asked. She smiled faintly. I don't know. I was never allowed to find out. 2 days passed like breaths. They didn't speak of the Empire. They spoke of tools, of books, of stars. She wandered the corridors of the station like a child discovering a world, naming broken parts with made-up names, laughing when she got them wrong. Jared watched, silent. For the first time, she wasn't a symbol. She was simply alive, and somehow, so was he. Nights on the station were long. The stars didn't blink here. They stared. Outside the observation window, the gas giant below churned endlessly, a slow storm that never rested. Salara sat beside Jared in the soft blue glow, legs folded, hands tucked under her knees. Do you think we'll make it? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. Make it where? He asked without looking away from the void. Anywhere. Alive. Jared took a slow breath. I think the moment we stop running is the moment we die. She didn't flinch. I'm tired of running. Silence. Then she opened her palm. A silver cube rested in it, simple and unassuming, but dense with implication. This is the key to the vault, she said. With it, I can rewrite the bloodline. I can create heirs without the Empress. I can break everything. Jared stared at it, the weight of entire empires condensed into a device no larger than a stone. You're telling me you hold the power to choose the next rulers of your people? No, she said. I'm telling you I made myself the most dangerous woman alive. That's when the lights failed. Not dimmed, vanished. A pulse echoed through the station, like the breath of a predator. Jared stood instantly. Someone just entered the system. Salara didn't ask how he knew. She just rose, tying her silver hair back, slipping on a jacket, scavenged from the old lockers. No more robes, no more golden skin. She didn't look like a princess now. She looked like someone ready to survive. Together they moved like shadows through the hollow station. Jared's scanner picked up 2 signatures, close, deliberate. No heavy weapons, no shouts. That was worse. These weren't soldiers. These were hunters. They laid their trap in an old cargo hold, sealed the exits, vented knockout gas, and waited. The intruders entered, silent, controlled, mercenaries. Salara recognized the dialect they spoke, bloodbound. The kind you pay in fear, not credits. The doors slammed shut, gas hissed, the hunters fell, and for the first time, Salara's mask cracked. How did they find us? She whispered in the aftermath. Jared checked the cube. No beacon, not a signal. Then someone's watching me. Always has been. Back in their makeshift quarters, she lay staring at the cracked ceiling. Her voice came out like a ripple across still water. Is Earth really filled with oceans and forests and people who laugh for no reason? Jared smiled faintly. And bars where people yell about sports, and kids who steal things and blame their siblings. She chuckled, small and real. Sounds messy. It is. You'd like it. And in that moment, surrounded by rust and threat and silence, it didn't feel like war anymore. It felt like something forgotten, something sacred. Peace. She asked if he missed his old life. He said sometimes, but this was something else. I spent my life being told who I had to be, she whispered. This is the first time I've stolen it back, then softer, and I'm scared. He touched her hand. You're allowed to be scared, and in that stillness, two souls scarred by systems and duty, simply breathed. Then she leaned in and kissed him, not in lust, not in danger. In the quiet, trembling language of those who have nothing left to lose. And finally find something worth keeping. They fell asleep curled together on a cot meant for one, wrapped not in passion but in silence, the kind that hums when the soul exhales. For the first time in either of their lives, there was no command to obey, no performance to maintain, only the breath of the other. But peace doesn't last in a universe built on conquest. The station groaned as pressure shifted through its bones. Jared woke first, instincts already screaming. The stars outside had vanished, swallowed whole by a shape too vast to comprehend. Salara clutched the cube in her hand as she rose beside him. There, above them, hung a monster born of legacy and iron, the Dominion warcruiser, a leviathan plated in obsidian, pulsing with cold blue light. Silent in its menace. It did not fire. It didn't need to. The message arrived instead, through every speaker, every wire, every wall, a voice smooth, imperial, and absolute. This is Empress Viora of the Arkan Dominion. You are harboring my daughter. Return her and you will not be harmed. Refuse, and I will dismantle your sanctuary atom by atom. It was not a threat. It was a promise delivered by someone who had never been refused. Salara stood frozen. She's here, she whispered. I can feel her. Jared tried to find an exit. None. Their skimmer was a toy beside that dreadnought. The station's jump system was dead. The communications jammed. They were buried. We have to run, Jared said. No, Salara replied, voice tight. We can't. If I flee again, she'll punish everyone I've ever touched. Resistance fighters, diplomats, children who dared to hope. She'll burn the galaxy to make an example of me. Jared clenched his fists. Then what do we do? She reached into her coat and pulled out a golden ring. I can send a surrender signal. She'll take us alive, especially if I threaten to destroy the key. She won't risk losing it. And then what? He asked. You go back in chains? Maybe. Maybe she strips my mind, clones me into something loyal, something empty. He turned from her, paced the floor, fury dancing. Beneath his calm, she expects obedience. That's her weakness. Salara sat heavily, exhausted. Obedience is the currency of empires. Then let's give her something she doesn't understand, Jared said, stopping in his tracks. Fear. Within minutes, the station stirred like a waking beast. Power surged. Old antennas unfolded, and static screamed through forgotten Dominion frequencies. The transmission was prepared not to the Empress, but to the galaxy. And when the signal went live, Salara stood before the Dominion flag, not as a daughter, but as a challenger. I am Salara of the Arkan Dominion, she declared. Not as property, but as heir. Not as pawn, but as voice. She raised the cube. This key is more than lineage. It is liberation. I will not run. If I fall standing. But if I rise, I take the throne. The feed crackled but held, and then came the flood. Not weapons but responses, freighters, rebel fleets, even Terran units disobeying orders, messages of support, of allegiance, of rebellion, a movement. The Dominion ship didn't fire, but it didn't leave, because even tyrants hesitate when the world begins to dream. The transmission had ended, but the echo of it rippled across the stars. Salara's words traveled farther. than she ever had, through smuggler relays, through diplomatic satellites, through minds dulled by years of obedience. And something began to shift, not in governments, but in people. 3 months passed in the hush that comes before a scream. The galaxy did not strike. It watched. Jared and Salara disappeared again, not into fear, but into preparation. Their hiding place was a cold moon, silent and slow, lost in the dusk-reach cluster. Their home was a salvaged outpost from a time when miners dared to challenge. Vacuum and stone, cracked solar grids, bare bones defense towers, one bed, one door, and too many stars. And for the first time in her life, Salara woke each day as only herself. She planted herbs in recycled soil, curled up with Terran paper books, tasted things she hadn't stolen or been served. She danced sometimes without reason or music. Jared worked silently, repairing, training, learning every possible path out if war found them again. At night, they didn't talk of escape. They talked of stories, of Earth, of home, and of each other. Then came the change. It began with dizziness, then cravings, snowmelt, spiced fruit from forgotten colonies, restless sleep, unfamiliar dreams. Salara laughed it off. Just gravity, she said. My body's rebelling against freedom. But Jared knew war wounds when he saw them. This wasn't gravity. In the outpost's medbay, Jared stared at the screen, the words refusing to settle in his brain. Say it again. Salara sat quietly, hands trembling in her lap. I'm pregnant. There was no sound, only heartbeat, hers, his, and now another. I didn't plan this, she said, eyes wet. I didn't even think it was possible. Our bloodlines don't mix. They've tried for centuries. But this wasn't engineered. Jared sank into the nearest chair, stunned. It just happened, she whispered. Not in a lab, not in a prophecy, but here, with us. He reached out and touched her hand. We protect this, he said. Whatever it takes. She nodded. I won't let my child grow up in a cage. He smiled gently. Then we build something no cage can hold. But the stars were listening, and power is never blind to what threatens its order. 3 days later, the sensors blinked red. A stealth probe Dominion made embedded deep in the frozen woods. Watching, listening, reporting. Jared smashed it with the butt of his rifle, but it had already whispered. She knows, Salara said, staring into the dark. She knows where we are. And worse, what we've made. They didn't wait to be hunted. That night, as the frost deepened and the stars above grew still, they packed what little they had: rations, weapons, maps, the cube. But now, there was something more. A life not just fought for, but forming. Fragile, silent, and fierce in its defiance. Jared glanced at her standing in the outpost doorway, one hand over the slight curve of her stomach, lit by the flickering hum of salvaged lights. He crossed the room and took her hand without words. They had said all there was to say. She didn't want the throne. She wanted to burn it down. They didn't hide when they emerged. No stealth tech, no false ID codes. The rebel fleet needed to see them, needed to feel the pulse of change, not in whispers but in thunder. 67 ships rose from the shadows of silence. Rusted freighters, reclaimed Dominion warbirds, Terran destroyers stripped of allegiance, but heavy with will. A mismatched armada, but not disorganized. These ships bore scars, not colors. Their crews fought for belief, not reward. The fleet's heart flew the Sirocco, sleek and black, trimmed in gold. Not a royal vessel, but a symbol forged in exile. On its bridge stood Salara, no crown upon her head, no robe across her shoulders, just a black tunic, her silver hair tied back. A crimson slash burned across the royal mark on her chest. Her hand rested not in shame, but pride, over her unborn child. Jared stood beside her, armored and ready. Not a bodyguard, not a soldier, a witness, a partner, a man who once stood alone, and now stood for something more. Ahead, like a god veiled in shadow, loomed the Dominion's throne world. A gas-wrapped sphere pierced by golden towers, encircled by weapons older than planets. And above it, the Empress's citadel, cold, perfect, eternal. The comes open. This is Princess Salara of the Arkan Dominion. Her voice rang across every rebel frequency, every Dominion tap. I bring no peace treaty. I bring truth. No fire, no fanfare, just words. This war was not born from rebellion. It was born from silence, from the worship of control. I carry the future in my body, not a clone, not a tool, a child created from love. That child proves the old code is broken. She leaned forward, her voice aflame. And today, I give the galaxy a choice: follow a dying empire, or help me build something new. Only one response came. One word: cold. Regal. Come. They descended. No shields raised. No weapons primed, just faith. Jared walked with her down the landing ramp into the courtyard of the palace that had once claimed her soul. Dominion guards lined the path like statues, unreadable. At the end of it, beneath a monument of obedience, stood the Empress. Her crown shimmered like light bent by gravity. Her robe whispered across the stone. She did not scowl. She did not rage. She simply looked disappointed. I raised you better than this, she said. Salara met her gaze. No, she said. You raised a weapon. I became a person without you. The Empress's eyes narrowed at Jared. You gave our legacy to a Terran. Salara smiled faintly. It was never yours to keep. The Empress turned, her voice cold steel, then challenge. Me properly. The hull of legacy was not built for mortals. It pulsed with a silence so complete it pressed against the soul. A circular chamber carved from obsidian and starlight, it stood as the heart of the Dominion, every ruler's truth. Etched into glowing memory cores that lined the walls like watchful ghosts, only blood was allowed inside. No soldiers, no allies, no lovers. Salara let go of Jared's hand at the door, but her grip lingered, saying everything her mouth could not. If I fall, she said. You won't, he answered. Not alone. And then the doors closed. She stepped into her inheritance, not to accept it, but to question it. The Empress waited at the center, eyes unreadable, hands folded like a judge at the edge of war. This was not a duel of flesh, but of essence, a battle of confession and truth. They would speak in turns, each memory burned into the throne's core, shown to the Dominion and through their broadcast, to the galaxy. The Empress began. She showed victories. Banners raised, enemies crushed, civilizations pacified, order imposed on chaos. Her voice never wavered. She painted herself as the architect of peace, ruthless, yes, but necessary. A queen who had carved silence out of entropy. Then Salara spoke, and the air changed. She showed cities left to rot under royal decree. Children trained not to think, only to serve. She showed broken treaties born from forced compliance. She showed her own upbringing, not luxury, but a prison of silk and surveillance. And then she showed Jared, the abandoned station, the cube in her hand. The moment she felt her child's heartbeat, a flicker passed through the throne's core. Not resistance, confusion. The system trembled under the weight of something it could not catalog, a memory born from love, not command. The Empress's lips thinned. Her memories sharpened discipline, lineage, the unbreakable chain of blood. But Salara stepped forward and showed more. She showed her choice. The night she kissed a man from a world her people despised. The promise they made, not to rule, but to protect. The life growing inside her, impossible, unapproved and yet real. The throne glitched, its glow dimmed, its core stuttered. For the first time in its long existence, it hesitated, because the truth it was designed to hold could no longer contain. The truth being born before it. Outside, loyalist ships drifted, orders blurred, doubt bloomed like cracks in steel. And when the doors to the throne room opened, it was not the Empress who emerged. It was Salara. She walked with her back straight, her hand resting over her child, not as a ruler ascending but as a future walking forward. Beside her, Jared waited. He took her hand as if it was always meant to be there, and behind them, the Empire exhaled. The sky above the throne world did not roar. It wept quietly, invisibly, as ships shifted their allegiance, as commanders hesitated over fire keys, as centuries of fear blinked under the weight of a single memory that dared to break the script. Salara stepped out onto the balcony of the Dominion Palace, flanked not by noble guards, but by rebels, Terran allies, and Dominion defectors whose eyes no longer bowed to blood. Jared stood at her side, his hand steady, his presence in spoken strength. This was not his war, but it was his fight now. She raised the vault key high, not like a weapon, but like a torch. No more puppets, she declared. No more bloodlines, no more thrones. From this moment forward, we are not ruled by blood, but by choice. The sound that followed wasn't a cheer. It was a shudder through the towers of power, a quake in systems built on obedience. Something old had broken, and no one knew how deep the cracks would go. Later, in the quiet of their new chambers, Jared placed a hand on her belly, feeling the warmth, the life, the echo of rebellion in its purest form. Do you think the child will understand what we did? He asked. Salara leaned into him, her breath soft against his shoulder. They won't need to, she said. They'll live in a world where they can choose who they are. That's enough, but peace born from fire does not spread easily. They knew the Empress's fall was not the end. The Dominion still had claws. Loyalists still waited in the shadows, clinging to the past like a dying god. They had not crushed the Empire. They had only broken its mask. But that was enough for now, for in the corners of space once too afraid to speak, new signals flickered. Planets long silent began to murmur. Children born beneath banners of fear whispered her name not as scandal, but as symbol, not the flirty princess, not the runaway, not even the queen, but the one who lit the match. History would never agree on when it truly changed. Some would say it was when the vault key was stolen. Others, when a forgotten soldier caught a royal smile and didn't blink. Many would mark the day the throne room lights flickered under the weight of memory to human descript. But those who lived it knew the truth. It changed the moment someone chose to love instead of obey. The Empire did not fall in a blaze. It fractured slowly, like ice under steady sun. Some systems remained loyal, others drifted. Some rose in open revolt. But everywhere, the same question bloomed. What if power didn't come from inheritance? Jared and Salara never reclaimed the palace. They never wore crowns. They didn't want to. They left the ruins behind and returned to the stars not to hide, but to lead by absence. To show that change didn't need a throne, just a direction. Their child was born aboard a rebel medical frigate, silent and healthy, eyes wide with a clarity that belonged to no bloodline, only to choice. They named them Leora, an ancient Terran word, a promise in sound. Light. Leora would grow not in the shadow of power, but beneath stars reclaimed by stories. She would walk planets once conquered, now free to dream. Her parents didn't build a kingdom. They seeded a horizon, and across the galaxy, others followed. A mechanic on a dust moon refused a noble's demand. A scholar in a Dominion academy leaked forbidden archives. A captain turned his warship away from a bombardment order, citing conscience as his authority. The revolution wasn't fire. It was erosion. Salara, once dressed in gold and scandal, now wore grease on her hands and quiet in her eyes. Jared, the disgraced soldier, became something rarer than a general, a man who chose peace when given a reason. They never stopped running, not from enemies, but from becoming static, from being statues in someone else's future, because what they carried wasn't just a child. It was a blueprint, not of a bloodline, but of a world remade, and somewhere, in the ruins of the old throne, the memory core still flickered, searching, replaying, failing to comprehend the shift. Because for all their power, they were never programmed to understand this. A princess once played with fire and chose to become the flame.